Happy Thursday. Hello, everybody. Come on in, come on in, come on in, come on in. It is time to get started. It is time to get started. Come on in, come on in. Happy Thursday. Welcome to Title Experts University. Another session, right? Another day to learn more, to earn more. Listen, welcome. Happy Thursday. Welcome to your space. Welcome to your learning environment. Welcome to the opportunity for us to come together and have a conversation, right? About another topic related to our business, Come on in. I see you guys coming in. Let me know when you're here. Say here in the chat. Let me know when you're here. Say here in the chat so that we can get started. As we know, this is our lunch break, so we always endeavor to get in here and get started on time. Hey Diana, listen, you are diligent to to like nobody's business. I am so happy to see you here. We've seen each other 3 days straight now. I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, listen, we're going to go ahead and get started. Let's see which way we're going to go here. We want to go ahead and get started with our discussion for today, our quick webinar. Our discussion topic today is mastering the as-is contract financing clause. We're going to master in 30 minutes, the as-is contract financing clause, because you're going to get down the fundamentals. You're going to get down the things that tend to trip realtors up the most. But after we have this conversation today, I assure you, you should be very confident. You'll have the ability to go back and review again. And then, of course, if you have any questions, drop those questions in the community. For those who I have not had an opportunity to meet before, welcome to Title Experts University, your learning space. My name is Ray Cole Jackson. I'm a real estate attorney. A little bit about myself as far as my background. Got my undergraduate degree from the University of Florida. Go Gators, right? Went to law school in California, came back here to Miami and got my LLM in real property development from the University of Miami School of Law. And I am, like you, a licensed real estate sales professional in the great state of Florida. Listen, so today's conversation, mastering the financing clause of the as-is FAR/BAR contract. Let's just get right into it. No time to waste. We got a lot to talk about. So first, again, I want to make the point that today we are discussing the as-is contract financing clause. We know that there are two forms of contracts in Florida: the CRISP, the contract for residential sale and purchase, and our as-is. Today we're discussing the as-is. So before we get into discussing loan financing, what we have here is paragraph 8 of the as-is contract. And the first subpart of paragraph 8 is actually cash, right? So it says this is a cash transaction with no financing contingency. So this is not even talking about financing just yet. This buyer is making an offer to purchase this property for cash. I wanted to hit here because we do get questions about that. So I wanted to clarify that when an offer is made for a cash purchase, we know that there is what? There's no financing contingency. That means that this contract should not cancel based on the buyer not being able to obtain financing. There's no financing contingency. There's no loan financing contingency. You clearly said that you're interested in purchasing cash. However, understand that the buyer can still decide to seek financing. So just because they check off the box that says I'm going to purchase cash does not mean that the buyer cannot then turn around and say, you know what, I'm actually going to hold on to my cash. I'm going to hold on to my cash and I'm going to get a loan, right? I am actually going to get a loan. So sometimes there's confusion, and then there's a party saying, wait a minute, no, you said you were purchasing cash. You can't go get financing. They can. Pursuant to the contract, they can. However, what they cannot do is they cannot seek to cancel the contract and get their deposit back in the event that their financing is not approved. Does that make sense? So they've made a cash offer. You're saying that you do not need to rely on the ability to cancel this contract in the event that you're not able to obtain financing. However, you can decide to turn around and obtain financing. Now, before we move off this point, a question that I've gotten before was, well, what if I don't want them to be able to go and seek financing? I just do not want to have that conversation. Well, you can add that language in the additional terms section that the buyer cannot and will not. It will be a breach of the contract for the buyer to seek to obtain financing. And that way you have closed the door on financing as it relates if they've made a cash offer. All right. Let's move into actual loan financing. Loan financing, where the buyer has said, I am seeking financing this purchase via a loan. So let's first of all, let's review the language, because I believe oftentimes we've never really taken the time to read the language. So let's review the language specifically. It says, this contract is contingent upon within blank. If left blank, then 30 days after the effective date, which constitutes the loan approval period, buyer obtaining approval of conventional FHA, VA, or some other loan mortgage for purchase of the property for a, and then we're selecting fixed, adjustable, or fixed or adjustable rate loan in the amount of, at an initial interest rate not to exceed, what interest rate? And if blank, then the prevailing rate based on the buyer's credit worthiness for a term of how many years? That is the terms that the buyer is seeking, right? It goes on to say buyer's mortgage broker or lender having received an appraisal or turn evaluation of the property satisfactory to the lender, if they are required by the lender, which is sufficient to meet the terms required by the lender. So that section is literally saying, all it's saying is the contract is contingent upon the buyer obtaining a loan approval within this number of days under with these terms of the loan approval. That's it. It's a lot of language, a lot of legalese, a lot of attorneys, if, then, and for unnecessarily. But all they're saying is by this deadline, the buyer seeks to have a financing approval with these terms. I'll suggest to you, this section should not be left blank. I don't see it as much as I used to, but you should not leave this section of the contract blank, because what you place in this section will set a ceiling for your buyer and give them the ability to cancel the contract before the loan approval period in the event that the terms of their loan approval do not match what they've said that they're seeking. This purchase is contingent upon me receiving, within 30 days, me receiving a conventional loan at a fixed rate of 3% for a term not to exceed 30 years. That's what they're saying. Sometimes the question is, well, how do we know? What should we place in the offer with those terms? Well, most times, I would hope 99.9% of the time, your buyer is going to have a pre-approval, right, from their lender. And so from there, as well as speaking with the lender, you should be able to massage or figure what the terms are going to be. Now, I will tell you also, because you have a loan approval deadline that you're going to follow, you don't have to be too concerned about the terms not coming out exactly to what you placed here. Because again, if it doesn't match, you're going to cancel. The point is, it's not necessary to leave this section blank. If you're a listing agent, you also are concerned about what's entered here, because let's say, for example, using the same example, the buyer says, I want a conventional mortgage fixed rate at a rate not to exceed 2.9%. And you accept that offer, guess what? Now the buyer can cancel the contract if they don't obtain a conventional fixed rate loan at a rate of 2.9% for 30 years in this 5 point something 6% interest rate market, right? So both the buyer's agent and the listing agent should be paying attention to what's entered in that section. Now, what is my loan approval deadline? Line 89 of the contract will tell you what your loan approval deadline is. And I know sometimes this is lost on how to calculate this, because this most often, guys, is your last, what is it? Your last, the place of no return, right? Unless you built in some other contingency in the contract, generally your loan approval deadline is your point of no return. It is the last point generally at which you can cancel the contract and get your buyer's earnest money deposit back. So we need to know what that date is. We cannot make a mistake, right? So line 89 of the contract says this contract is contingent upon within blank number of days after the effective date. And then it has a parentheses loan approval period. Whenever you see a word or a term in parentheses like that on a document, it is telling you that what precedes it is the definition of this term. So the definition of our loan approval period is within X number of days after the effective date. Whatever date is filled in there, that is your loan approval period. Right? So, in order to calculate your loan approval period, you will need to know how to determine your effective date and how to calculate time. Right? Because there's two elements there. It says within blank number of days after the effective date. So you first need to know, well, what is the effective date? What is the effective date? And within this number of days, how do I calculate the number of days? That's what we're going to talk about. So first, what is your effective date? It's important that you know the contract effective date because that is the calculation of your of starting date for many time periods within your contract, but certainly figuring out what your loan approval deadline is going to be, right? So if we roll back to the first page of our contract, it tells us that our effective date of the contract is when the last person of the buyer or seller has signed or initialed and delivered the final offer or counter offer, basically the last version of the contract back to the other party. That's your effective date. Whenever the last person to receive the offer or counter offer or counter offer has received that document for signature or initial and they've returned it, the day that it's returned is your effective date. Not the day that it's signed, the day that it's returned. Not even the day that the other party that has received it opens their email and sees, oh my God, I have an accepted offer. No, it is the day that it is delivered. After it's fully signed, it's delivered back to the other party. That is your effective date. And it's important that you're clear on that effective date because, again, everything is going to be measured. Many dates in your contract are measured from that date. So now that we have our effective date, how do we calculate time? How do I calculate the deadline? I know where I'm starting from. How do I calculate my deadline? In the contract at paragraph F, it's called the standards and definitions section, starting at line 432 is our definition of time and how to calculate time. So it reads, time is of the essence. Calendar days based on where the property is located shall be used in computing time periods. There goes our keywords. We're trying to calculate time. It goes on to say, other than time for acceptance and effective date as set forth in paragraph 3, any time periods provided for or dates specified in this contract, whether pre-printed, handwritten, typewritten, or inserted herein, which shall end or occur on a Saturday, Sunday, national legal public holiday, or a day on which a national legal public holiday is observed because it fell on a Saturday or Sunday. It's a lot, right? We're going to make it plain shortly. It shall extend to the next calendar day, which is not a Saturday, Sunday, national legal public holiday, or a day on which a national legal public holiday is observed. That is our definition of time. Again, that is paragraph F of the standards and definitions section, and it starts at line 432. Key points from this definition for you to take away today. 1, calendar days are used when you're calculating your time period. Calendar days, not business days. What does that mean? That means that when you're calculating your time periods, you're going to count every day in that time period. Monday or Sunday through Saturday, right? Including weekends. It's not just Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's telling you that you're counting every calendar day, every day in that time period. Versus business days, it's only a business day that you would count in that time period from your effective date / starting date to your end date. So that's the first principle, understanding that it's your time period for the purposes of the as is contract is utilizing calendar days. The second point that you should pull away from the uh, time definition paragraph is the dates that do not change or do not roll forward in the event they fall on a Saturday, Sunday, or national legal holiday. Those dates are time for acceptance and effective date. It says, other than time for acceptance and effective date, other than those two dates, outside of those two dates, every other date that falls on a Saturday, Sunday, or national legal holiday is going to roll forward to the next non-holiday, non-Saturday, non-Sunday. So for our purposes, we're measuring what? The loan approval deadline. Because the loan approval deadline is not the time for acceptance, is not the effective date, that's going to be one of the days that, should it fall on a Saturday, Sunday, or holiday, or a day that a holiday is observed, it is going to roll forward to the next business day. That's going to be one of those days that fall into that exception, right? So the last fundamental, as it relates to computing time, is knowing that when you're counting, the effective day is day 0. All right? The effective day is day 0. So let's pull it all together. Why is this particular tab? All right, well, let's use this hypothetical. For some reason, we got this one has a little stuff going on with it. But I'm going to read through it for you guys if you probably can't see it. So for our hypothetical, the effective day is today. Today is our effective day. The loan approval deadline is within 3 days of the effective date. What is our loan approval deadline? Let's roll this back and see. Try this one more time. There it is. Just have to unplug it and plug it back in, right? So our hypothetical. Today is our effective date. Today is the 14th. In our hypothetical contract, our loan approval deadline is within 3 days of the effective date. What is our loan approval deadline? So I'm going to grab my calendar. Guys, grab your calendars right quick. If today is my effective date, today's the 14th, and I know that the effective day is day 0, right? And my loan approval deadline is within 3 days of the effective date. That means I don't count today because today is day 0. I start counting on the 15th. 1, 2, 3. I land on the 17th. What is my loan approval deadline? My loan approval deadline is Monday because the third day is a Sunday. And the fundamental said that any day other than the effective date and the time for acceptance of an offer, any other day that falls on a Saturday, Sunday, or national legal holiday, or a day that the holiday is observed, rolls forward to the next calendar day. That is not a Saturday, Sunday, or holiday day that the holiday is observed. It's fundamental. We need to know that. So you're not running like, oh my God, I should have had a loan approval on Sunday. No, you should not have had a loan approval on Sunday. Your loan approval deadline is Monday, 11:59. That's the next fundamental. Our contract used to say 4:59 or 5 p.m., but now it's 11:59. So now we know how to calculate our loan approval deadline, and we know how to ensure if it falls on a Saturday or Sunday that it rolls forward. Now, with regard to the loan approval deadline, here's what's important with this financing clause, guys. Can I tell you, it is the worst thing for me as a closing attorney to have a buyer lose their escrow deposit because they did not make their loan approval deadline. Specifically because it can be avoided, right? It can be avoided to the extent that if you know that the buyer is going to not meet their loan approval deadline, we should take action. We should get an extension. We should get with the lender. We must not just assume, we can't just sit by and allow our buyers to blow their loan approval deadline. Now, the other fundamental that you should know is that the loan approval deadline now includes the requirement that the property appraisal be also completed. Our former version of the contract was a little gray, had a little loophole, right? That allowed for the, he said, yes, Lord, allowed for the appraisal to be completed after the loan approval period. And if the property doesn't appraise, then you could have used that for a reason to cancel the contract. That is no longer a loophole. It is very clear in the contract that the appraisal must be completed during the loan approval period, right? If you do not obtain the loan approval, here are some things we should discuss. One, if you're going to get a loan approval, an extension of the loan approval deadline, you generally should also get an extension of the closing date. These things kind of go hand in hand. If they needed, X number of days to get the loan approval, they're still going to generally need X number of days to get their, what we call, clear to close. It's a whole nother conversation, right? What does a clear to close mean? What does that look like? What is the lender doing to get that clear to close? And so if you're able to get an extension of the loan approval period, you should also get an extension of the closing date. They go hand in hand. So when we talk about the loan terms, we went over earlier where you would fill in those loan terms, right? You wanted to make sure that you created a ceiling for your buyers. Now, I want to highlight the result of leaving this section blank, specifically at line 92. You guys can go back and review it on a hard copy of the contract. It says we'll start even at 91, where it says for a purchase of a property and it gives the mortgage, the loan types, fixed, adjustable, or fixed or adjustable rate loan, loan amount at an initial interest rate not to exceed blank. And it says if left blank, then the prevailing rate based upon the buyer's credit worthiness. Let's make that language plain. That means if you do not fill that section in and your buyer, for whatever reason, they thought they were going to get, let's say, a 3.5% interest rate, but they were using Credit Karma, right, instead of Experian, TransUnion, Equifax, right? And Credit Karma told them that they had a 800. Oh, you just gonna get a mansion. You are going to get a mansion. And Experian said, no, you're not. As a matter of fact, you need to go and work on a couple things for 6 months and come back. And if not, we'll give you a loan, but we'll give it to you at a rate of about 7.5%. If you didn't give them a ceiling, guess what? That's what your rate is based on your credit worthiness. So I always use this extreme example so that you don't forget. Give your buyers a ceiling, please. Give them a ceiling, right? Now, the other point I want to make sure that we're clear on with regards to the loan application, because this has been an issue before. Your buyer must use good faith and diligence in an effort to obtain a loan approval during the loan approval period. We're starting at line 102 of the contract. they will be considered in default of the contract if they do not. That is a instance of default. For the purposes of this provision, diligent effort includes but is not limited to timely furnishing all documents and information required by their broker or lender, paying for the appraisal and other fees in connections with their application for financing. So what does that mean? Generally, your buyer should just cancel the contract if they don't make, there's no reason for to drag this out. If you don't want to proceed with the transaction, just cancel, especially if you're in a loan approval period. There's no reason to not complete your requirements for the loan application. But know that in the event that there are some other terms that blocks your buyer from just simply canceling the contract, and they clearly fail to make diligent effort to complete their loan application, that is an instance of default. That is an instance of default. And unfortunately, I've seen it happen. So that's something that you should be aware of. Now, coming around the bend, here is the part that is clearly in the contract for almost 20 lines of the contract. However, it is not always abided by, and that is loan approval notice to the seller. From line 106 of the contract to line 125 of the contract is full of terms and instances of how the seller should be kept aware and given status of the loan approval. So first of all, starting at line 106, it says the buyer shall, upon written notice, keep the seller and broker, obviously the listing broker, fully informed about the status of buyer's mortgage loan application, loan processing, appraisal, and loan approval, including any property-related conditions of loan approval. Buyer authorizes buyer's mortgage broker, lender, and closing agent to disclose such status and progress and release preliminary and finally executed closing disclosures. What is that saying? That's saying if the seller requests it in writing, the buyer has to be an open book as it relates to the status of their loan approval. Keep them fully aware, right? Are they meeting their conditions? Well, I don't have to tell you. If the seller requested in writing, yes, you do. It's there in the contract. So on and so forth. Very clear. They ask for it, you have to be an open book. Now let's move along to notice regarding receipt of the loan approval. Subparagraph 3, it says, if within the loan approval period, buyer obtains loan approval, buyer shall notify seller of same in writing prior to the expiration of loan approval period. Or if the buyer is unable to obtain the approval by the deadline, but they're satisfied that they will be able to obtain approval at some point prior to closing, they can proceed to closing, and they should still, buyer shall deliver written notice to seller confirming same before the loan approval period. Most realtors are not aware that you're supposed to be giving the seller written notice. Either I've been approved, I haven't been approved, but I'm still proceeding. I'm pretty confident that Joe's going to get me there, right? Or subparagraph 4, if buyer is unable to obtain loan approval within a loan approval period or cannot timely meet the requirements, after exercising good faith, the buyer can terminate the contract and get their deposit back. We know that part. See, that's the part we know. We know subparagraph 4, but we don't know subparagraph 3, that if they do obtain the approval or they don't obtain the approval and they intend to proceed, that we should still give written notice to the seller. Now, this ties to subparagraph 5, that if the buyer fails to timely deliver written notice provided for in subparagraph 3 or 4 to the seller prior to the expiration of loan approval deadline, then they can proceed. They're going to proceed. They're going to blow their contingency period, their ability to cancel. But the seller may elect to terminate the contract by delivering written notice to the buyer within 3 days after expiration of the loan approval period and cancel the contract. So we talked about this before in a seller's market where values are rising, and this works for a seller, for example, that went under contract at, let's say they went under contract at 500, and now they have comps in their area at 600. And they're like, oh my God, get me out of this contract. They're like, get me out of this contract. Diana, get me out of this contract. Get me out of this contract. My neighbor just got 600,000. We're under contract for 5. This is ridiculous. And Diana's like, we're under contract. What do you want me to do? Diana says, you know what? Now, obviously, you don't want to unravel a deal, but your client, if you believe in your client and you want to get that 600 as well, you say, you know what? With their loan approval deadline period is coming up. You don't tell your seller that, of course. Don't show your hand just yet. Let's see if they give us notice of proceeding. Definitely, if they didn't get the approval, they're going to let us know. But either way, they should give us notice. And Diana says, okay, they didn't give us notice. Loan approval period deadline was Monday. They didn't give us notice. Diana goes to the seller on Tuesdays and says, do you really want out of this so that you can get the 600? Seller says, absolutely yes. What can you do? Diana says, well, at paragraph, there's a section of the contract that says that we can cancel the contract because they didn't give you notice. And then we can go ahead and get your $600,000 contract. Seller says cancel. Diana says, pursuant to line 123 of the contract, seller's canceling. You'll go get your deposit back. We're going under contract for $600,000. It is that explicit. Know that about the financing clause. Now, again, I don't know how many people are. It's happened. It doesn't happen a lot. Not many people are unraveling their deals for that. But know that you can. That provision is there. Okay? And buyer, know that you can be booted out of a deal if you're not giving the seller notice of your loan approval status. All right? So you want to provide notice prior to your loan approval deadline. All right. So recap. Here's what you want to make sure that you master regarding the financing contingency of the as-is part of our contract. One, you want to set your loan terms. You don't want your buyer, proceeding with the Credit Karma credit score, right? We're going to put an interest rate in there. 2, know your loan approval deadline. We know how to calculate now our loan approval deadline. 3, and this is important, we're going to request an extension of our loan approval period or cancel if necessary. We're not going to expose our buyers to losing their escrow deposit unknowingly, right? If they decide, I really want to stay in contract, I understand that I may lose my escrow deposit if my lender is not able to get me approval, but at least you'll know, and you'll obviously have in writing that they've decided to proceed without having the loan approval, right? And then lastly, you want to be sure that you provide notice of the loan approval to the seller. We digested all of that in 30 minutes. Any quick questions? If you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat. If not, you guys are now masters of the as-is contract financing clause. You guys are real confident. You know how to go and determine your effective date, how to calculate your dates, what your loan approval deadline is. Make sure you fill in your terms. Make sure you don't blow your deadlines. Make sure if you're representing the seller, you know that you're entitled to notice, or if you're concerned about whether or not things are going just well with the buyer's financing, send them a note. Hey, I would like to know about what's going on with this financing. I need some updates from your lender. All right. You're more than welcome. Listen, with that being said, you've done it again. Another session in the books, another section of Title Xperts University. You guys have been a wonderful, wonderful group of students today. It's good to see you all. I will see you guys next week. And again, yes. The recording will be in the community. It'll be in the community. Or you're on YouTube. Go into the Facebook group. And the recordings will be there. The recordings will also be on the YouTube page, actually. So it'll be recorded, it'll be posted to the YouTube. It'll also be in the Facebook community. Make sure you go in the Facebook community. If you guys have any questions after we end today, feel free to drop a question in the Facebook community, and we'll answer them there. All right. Have a great Thursday. Go get some contracts, and I will see you at the closing table. Bye now.